Care Chats. Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick. Care Chats. Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick. Grab a mug of care and join us for some Care Chats with Tanya, Mark, and Nick.
Yes, please.
We're excited to welcome back our dear friend Jonathan Koe for another Care Chat. Let's not beat around the bush and jump right in.
So how have you been caring for yourself, Tanya Mark? What's been alive in your care toolkit?
Yes, I was invited, I guess it would be a couple of weeks ago now, to take a look at my care when it comes to Venusian rituals with my body. And I've really appreciated that invite to take a look at that. You know, it has come with a lot of vulnerability and as well as been really kind of fun. Like, I kind of feel like I'm that teenager in the teen years that, like, when you first learn like a face hygiene or something like that, like, I feel like I'm learning that all over again.
Yeah.
But it feels good. It feels like a very loving way to the skin being our largest organ of our body. It's really made me think about how do I tend to the care of my body that way, you know?
Yeah. Maybe this is too early to investigate, but I'm curious if anything has transformed for you since engaging with the Venusian in this way.
Oh my gosh, huge things. Top surgery date is scheduled for July. And I can say this in the most sweetest way. I also feel like I'm seeding really loving connections, both platonically and romantically. And it's been really nice to kind of jump into the Venusian journey.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular Venus transit that's happening right now that is why you're focusing on that in this program?
Well, I guess there's two things going on. First of all, like, I'm really lucky to be enrolled in Jonathan Koe's Venus and Mars immersion. And I think that came in prior to me being invited to kind of look at my care in a Venusian way. And I think if I were going to connect the dots to astrology, I would say that, Venus moving to Aries has given me these nudges, with Saturn and Neptune being in Aries, have been giving me these nudges of, hey, get your shit together. Let's get it together. And I say that in a non-abrasive way. It's a very loving way that my spirit guides go, let's get our shit together. Come on, let's do it. And so I think that invite for me, right, has been really in a beautiful way. Of course, where it lands in my chart and all, looking at all those things for myself, kind of felt like it was this invite of, like, you're coming into having an opportunity to be in the body that I've always wanted to be in. How am I prepping, and what is my dieta for that? How am I going to tend to my body, my mind and my spirit as all of these beautiful things are happening? So I think it's a combo of things. And then, of course, like, being in Jonathan's class, it's just like, woo, like, amazingly, like, I'm here with it. Wow. Thank you both for asking about that. I want to know how you all are Venusianly taking care of yourselves.
Do you want to start, Nick?
No, I want you to start.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. I've been dipping back into, along with this, stewarding this Venus and Mars container, I've been really deep in ritual with both Venus and Mars. This is maybe... Well, it's not true, because I think in the past I've done it too. But usually when I'm stewarding a container, what I'm very often being asked to do is to, like, put out offerings every day. Like, it's a very extensive experience, which isn't, like, I would say I'm an inconsistent magician. Like, I don't do, like, rituals necessarily, but I found that when I'm, like, driving the bus, for everybody else and myself, that's what supports me to like really be in ritual every day. And it's been really fantastic, actually. It's been really cool to see how it shifts my reality, how it shifts my perception of myself, and just like the interconnectedness of life. Yeah, I think that's what ritual can really bring to us. You're not alone. You're never alone, which is a really beautiful and profound space, I think, to be in. Yeah. What about you, Nick?
I'm thinking about what's been up in my life lately, what I've been tending to, and I'm not sure if it's has any Venusian tendencies. You both have more of a astrological lens, so I'll let you do the analysis after I share if you want. But I still feel like I'm very much in the, we're still in the pagan Sabbath of Bridget and Imbolc, which is the time of preparing the soil and planting the seeds. So, in my household, we've been doing a lot of spring cleaning, getting rid of old stuff that we don't need or use anymore. And then also I feel like I've been tending to stuff from a more like business and financial perspective. We've been continuing to adjust and consolidate things around financial preparations as my husband and I are, aging and want to prepare for after we stop working. So hopefully we can stop working sooner than later. So all that stuff. And then I've also been spending some money to sort of shore up things around business. So I got an analysis of my website done. I'm going to have some more adjustments done with that, because with AI and search engines, there's all these new ways that websites need to be, your whole web presence needs to be adjusted in certain ways. And I have the old way, from 10, 15 years ago of knowing how to do that. And now I just need some coaching and support to do that. And then Tanya Mark and I have also been doing a lot of stuff in terms of like revisiting, revamping, with all the retrograde energies that we're in. We really noticed that Mercury retrograde is a really good time for queer spirit. And so we have a lot of things that we're doing and similar stuff. Like we're looking at like, okay, we've been using this system and that system wasn't really working and it was costing money. And it's like, why are we spending money on that? We need to move to this system now. And how do we streamline things and make things more efficient and also make things work better for us and for our community? So I don't know if that doesn't feel Venusian to me, but you guys can let me know.
I feel like money feels very Venusian to me.
Okay.
Money is extremely Venusian.
Yeah.
And
resources.
And it's making me think about how what it sounds like to me, Nick, that you're doing is you are creating the pathway so that the flow can happen.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes we underestimate how much structure helps flow. Because structure is what brings flow, right? And the allowing too, of course.
Yeah. Clearing structure, making structure, readjusting structure, tearing down walls, building new ones.
Well, to me, it's a form of energetic accountability, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an energetic invite to go in and look at like, okay, like if, I don't want to put it into if then statements, but it's kind of saying like, well, these are the things I'd like to move forward with, or these are the things we would like to look forward with, or where we're headed, right? So let's take a look at the pathway and let's take a look at like what systems and structures are in place, and do some of those things need to be cleared? Do some of them need to be adjusted so that it can make the pathway, it's an accountability thing to me, because it's like, I don't know, someone said to me, it's a few years ago now, and I appreciate the nudge. Like, I was very much in hermit stage, like, hey, Tanya Mark, have you ever thought about like you keep calling in like you want to make new friends, like, do you think they're just going to show up at your front door? Like, you know? And I think there's this idea of exactly what we're talking about. Like, if we are honoring and what we do, what lights us up and what we value, how do we take responsibility along the whole way? Right? Like, it's not about the outcome, it's the tending along the pathway.
Yeah. That makes me think about in magic, people talk about like you have to do the spiritual work and the inner work, but then you also have to, you can't just like say a prayer or cast a spell or make a wish and then literally expect something to show up at your door unless you're ordering it from the mail. But you have to go out into the world. It's like if you want a job, you have to go and apply for a job. Someone's not just going to show up at your door and be like, here's a job for you. Right. Or if you want to make friends, as you were saying, Tanya Mark, you have to put yourself in a situation where you're going to meet new folks.
Yeah, definitely.
We just jumped in.
We dove right into the deep end, folks. Welcome to this configuration of Queer Spirit with Jonathan Koe.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a good reminder because, you know, what I've been thinking about recently is like the split that we create between the material world and the non-material world, and how much of that split is a result of, you know, colonization, supremacy culture, religious trauma, right? And there's actually, in fact, if you look at older ways of looking at the world, there's really no division between. I mean, there is kind of that, you know, a lot of cultures talk about the liminal space, right? So there's certainly division. It's just that the connection between them is much more fluid, and one influences the other. And what you just said, Nick, made me think about how the idea of inspired action is something that I've been contemplating about recently. And to me, inspired action is when we connect with that, you know, let's just say infinite or like source part of us, right? That multidimensional part of us, and then allow that to move us into a direction that we probably would otherwise not go into, you know? And in my life, I know that another way that I've been tending to myself and being like really caring for myself, but also for others, is to not procrastinate on things. This is something that I've been struggling with for a very long time because I have really, you know, webby, scrambly brain, and I go in all different directions. And I think for a while too, like there's a function of my ego that really loves kind of the chaos. Like there was, you know, maybe if I look back to like 2 or 3 years ago, I was living a pretty structured life, or what felt to me like a pretty structured life. So then I wanted to kind of go a little wilder. You know, I don't want to be constrained, right? But a byproduct of that is over time, I notice myself putting things off, you know, and then if you continue putting things off, you just don't even have a sense anymore of what's actually what you're inspired to do. And what I'm finding out in this new space of letting myself move when the inspirations strike is that a lot of the times things that I thought took a long time, or that I thought I needed a lot of resources to do, I actually don't. Like, for example, a great example for this is like making art. You know, I've been wanting to make art for years, and I keep saying it and I don't do it. And then once I start doing it, I realize it doesn't even take that much energy or effort, really, right? Like all I have to do is be in that space of allowing and receiving, which I love to be in anyway. You know, I would practice a little bit of breath work or meditation. And then if I just sit there in nothingness for 5 minutes, usually I'm moved to make some kind of art, which is amazing, actually. And I realized, oh, this is really easy. It really is easy. And maybe part of this too is reclaiming or integrating that past version of myself that used to make art out of like struggle or strife. Yeah.
You definitely.
It's kind of cool to be like, I'm not there anymore. I want to hear what both of you had to say.
Oh, I was like, kind of like the reattunement that I hear you doing with like the artist in you, you know what I mean? And like, I don't know, it's just really special. It feels very nurturing and caring to like recognize that, you know, I relate to procrastination. I relate to, you know, I think I relate to the idea of like reattuning to the fact that like these things may be simpler than what our shadowy aspects may have created them out to be, right? And so there's this accountability that you're talking about, that when you sit and do whatever that is for yourself to get yourself to a place where you know it can open up to like just artistically flow, you're reassuring and reattuning your system from like, you know, a lot of programming that we come from that doesn't necessarily support us, you know, doing the things that light us up just because they light us up, you know, or that kind of medicine, right? Being in touch with our creativeness without there being an attached income or outcome or competitiveness, right? The artists that I've been talking about with lately on potential collabs, you know, been naming a lot of that, you know, like this idea of us being creative people are attached to so many things. I just recently got in touch with that. I've been like a closet artist since I was a kid. Like all of the stuff that I did that was creative was always in my little bedroom. My lip syncing to albums, my singing out loud to albums, my collection of beer bottles that look different because my dad liked to get like different beer from different countries, and I'd make beer bottle thing. All of it took place in my room, right? Because a part of my queerness or my own homophobia was like, ooh, if I show those aspects of me, it's going to really out me as being gayer because I was already, you know, and so there was a lot of stuff attached to, you know, and also recognizing that I have two parents who were also very creative, but chose to not make, well, they just made different choices on how they expressed that. It was very closeted. You know, they'd listen to albums in the house or, you know, lowly sing. I could hear my mom singing to songs, you know, and hear my dad, like they both enjoyed cooking. But it was all in this context of this is what happens behind closed doors kind of thing. Not this idea of this is how we can just live and be. So it's been a lot of lessons for me. You know, I feel very inspired by both of you in that way, because I think you both are incredible artists who really flow in such incredible ways. In the mail this week, finally, I get this really lovely creative sticker from Nick. Like, but it's not just that. It's the envelope is full of colored ink and it's with stickers. And like, I just wanted to sit on the altar and I'm kissing it. Like, oh, this is from Nick. It's so cute and sweet. That's art. That's the stuff that I know lights my friend up. He is an incredible crafter, and it was put together with so much fucking intention. Right. Yeah. And those are the spaces and places that I feel right now, you know, that are so important for us to be open to. How can we get there and swim in those?
Come out of the art closet, Tanya Mark. Come out of the art closet.
I'm finding my way.
I love that.
Yeah. Jonathan, when you were talking, when you're like, it's just so easy. And I'm just like, I guess so. I bet you there's lots of people listening who are like, I don't know if it's that easy. But I was just thinking like about
why not though?
Well,
that's the thing, Nick.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah. Well, this is what I have a theory. So yes, what I was also thinking about when you were sharing that is like I was totally seeing like you as the magician and the tarot card, because you talked about like being a magician, right? And in the magician, what the common image of the magician card, if I'm remembering correctly, is he's got one hand like up and one hand up towards the heavens, towards the sky, towards spirit, and one hand down towards the earth or towards his table or his altar. And that's kind of like you. That's what you're describing. And you also said, like, there's this split between like the physical world and the spiritual world. And, you know, we have to be that bridge. We have to be the magician. And so I think I'm wondering if, you know, because you are so connected to both things, you know, you talked about, oh, if I just do meditation or breath work or something like that, then it just comes like that helps activate that link, I think. So how can we do that? How can we be the magician connecting to spirit and to the earth, to physical reality? And
it's on the table in the magician, though. That's the thing. What's in between are all the elements, right? So like in any kind of iteration of that, yes, those pointing is happening, but it's that in between of looking at like the in between part to me is like the elemental are all here. And also here again, here comes accountability is coming in strong today of like, here's all the elements and what do you want? Where do you see yourself? What that to me kind of is the in between. Yeah.
What's been coming back online for me is this more, feels like actually a much younger way of approaching life, like a more childlike way, but maybe also very connected to like a much older part of me too, where essentially it's like that child elder, child sage is just existing, you know, and there's like such a direct honesty and sincerity, which is such an interesting word because I feel like even as I say that, sincerity is always like in contrast to how insincere the made up world is, but it's a bypassing, I think. Actually it is a bypassing of like whatever people think is, how do you pick a point somewhere in the reality map and like get as far away from that as possible so that you can access a way of being where whatever is going on is not even relevant, you know? And I think this is part of, I've been claiming the term magician for myself. Like to me, this is what the magician does. Like if you look at even people like, I'm trying to think of Houdini, maybe, you know, is a really famous performer magician, right? Or let's think about someone else who's like a real magician on stage as a performer.
David
Jimi
Copperfield.
Hendrix.
Jimi
David
Hendrix. There you go.
Copperfield,
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. These are people who are really like out of left field. You know, I think about what's his name?
Prince comes in for me easily.
Prince. Yeah. Prince. You know, it's so like off the charts, right? Like completely out of the box. And I think part of that is also like not trying to do that, but actually like letting yourself be in that really authentic part. But it does require some kind of breaking of like whatever structure you've put yourself in, you know, whether that's like a self-concept or an identity or like energetic or physical, but all of that is obviously like connected, right? And I think what's so cool about the modalities that all three of us play in is actually it doesn't really matter. That's what I've been realizing. I think there's a lot of really intellectual and I think probably really great discussions about like, oh, you know, is that mental or is that emotional? You know, is that somatic? But I think ultimately it doesn't really matter. Like when you actually do the thing, it doesn't really matter. You know, how you get there doesn't matter. It's just a portal, right? Like you can get there through tarot or through astrology or breath work or meditation. But I think what matters is more about what state it allows you to be in. You know, and humans crave that ritual state. You know, earlier we were all talking about the flow state, and I think that flow state really only comes from ritual. And for so many of us, I think ritual becomes harder and flow becomes harder and harder to access because we're so attached to our phones, you know, to our calendars, to productivity. And that actually gets in the way of flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't think that flow has to come particularly or strictly from ritual. I think it can come in lots of different ways. I mean, I was just talking with a client the other day, and they were talking about like just the energy of connection and relationship, and that being like a flow state, like just when you are present with another person, you know, maybe through technology, but probably more likely in the flesh, of having that flow state that comes. I mean, even like play, right? When you're playing with someone else.
That's funny you say play, because what was coming to mind was that a few days ago, I have the honor of working with someone, right? And they were here in person, right? And so they were doing their thing and I was doing my thing. And I was like, well, I have this online thing that I'd like to attend, right? But then we were looking at time and we also wanted to play music together, right? So I had this moment where I went outside and I was like, Tanya Mark, you have been in this virtual world, like not even in a shaming way, just like, hey, like, you know, I love my virtual spaces and I'm super grateful for all of the wonderful stewards that I have the opportunity to participate with and in, right? Those spaces are amazing. And I feel like I'm recognizing here is another human person with an instrument that's also here in person where you could just be in flow and you could just be within music. So I literally was like, you know what? I will make time to catch the recording of the beautiful class online. Like, let's be together and we could play music together and jam and be in sound together and that's the choice I made to, like, I feel like it's this accountability thing. Like there's these crossroads of saying, hey man, like you're calling these things in, you're asking the records, you're asking the universe, like provide me spaces and places where I can be my authentic self, right? In all the ways. And that to me was this little crossroads of, do you go and do what you've always done, or can you be open to the fact that there's this other opportunity here? And it was beautiful. It was so beautiful to just turn an instrument, in this case, keyboard for me, and for them to turn on their cue chord, which is a very magical instrument that, you know, I've never even been exposed to. And we could just be together, two queer people in this little dreamy place, playing music, making sound. And oh my gosh, my whole system, I felt it in all of the ways, was just so queerly happy. Like this was the best choice in this moment right now, to be in flow and to be in flow with another human being, right? With, again, not attached to outcome, but literally just being present in the moment, doing things that light us up.
Yeah. What does accountability mean for you, Tanya Mark?
Right now, it's very attached to like checking my intentions, checking my whys, wheres, hows, right? And being action wise, you know, like that. I feel like this idea, I can hear a lot of my mentors from the past, you know, like asking like, well, if these are the things that you are wanting or wanting to move forward, how are you being accountable in here to what's happening, what's being activated, and what actions are you taking or not taking, you know, taking the time to check in, right? I feel like this is such a time to me right now where I feel like check-ins are happening more often, right? And more often, and being open to flowing. So accountability to me is checking in here, checking in with my concept of source, my concept of spirit team, which it also includes community. So folks like yourselves, you know, there's a lot of things in there for me around accountability, being present, you know. Thanks for asking that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really buzzing in my radar today, like that, you know, it's buzzing around. So, you know, something there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a relationship with that word, Nick, or do you use a different word for
accountability?
Yeah, for what Tanya Mark is speaking to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know what's coming to mind, and for some reason, I feel I feel like I can't remember if I was part of this conversation or if I just heard this conversation. And I feel like it was just the other day. And maybe it was with Tanya Mark. I don't remember. It didn't come from Tanya Mark. So correct me, remind me if this sounds familiar. But I was listening to someone talk about the word responsibility, and that they had a teacher or a mentor say that responsibility is your ability to respond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think about that in sort of combination with accountability. So like when you have responsibility or accountability, like what to really tune into your system and like what are your needs, what are your boundaries, what is your energy level to have the ability to respond to something that maybe you've taken ownership of or responsibility for or accountability for. And the other word that comes to mind when I think about that is discipline. But again, it's more like self-discipline, like, okay, like I'm holding myself accountable and I'm being disciplined with staying connected to my values, I think is a lot of what that's about. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Jonathan, how about you?
Nice.
I always appreciate you asking your questions of like, we just end up going like down the river, around the pathway.
Yeah. I really I've been really deep in that mode that you were speaking to, Tanya Mark, of like checking in with my own intention, like why am I doing this? What is and for me this feels maybe a word I would use is like choice, right? For me it kind of feels more like the flavor of that word of like, okay, if I'm already doing something, like let's say earlier you were mentioning about flow state, Nick, and it made me think about how in previous chapters in my life, I would find flow states through just being in front of an Excel spreadsheet, and I think that flow state is everywhere. And flow state is like the lack of resistance. When we are not resisting whatever it is that's in front of us, whatever it is that life is bringing to us, giving ourselves permission to be fully 100% there if we do decide to do it, right? And I've been noticing like, oh, there is sometimes a choice point because there might be things that come into my lap that don't always feel like a 100% excited, full body yes for me, and yet I recognize, going back to what I said earlier about not procrastinating, the necessity of doing some of these things, which are oftentimes upkeeps. This is something I'm coming to understand better about myself in my 36th year, which is the reality that like upkeep is a little bit boring for me, like conceptually. Like maintaining something is a little bit boring. And I know this because I have very little fixed energy in my chart. The only fixed planet I have is Venus in Aquarius. And I have so many, cardinal mutable energies. So there's a lot of like shifting, synthesizing things, remixing things are very exciting for me. Starting new things, very exciting. But keeping a steady rhythm for where the thing that I've started, it's challenging. It's really, really challenging. And the question then is like, okay, going back to what you were saying earlier, Tanya Mark, like if I feel like I want to stray away from what I've decided, right? What is the intention behind that? And staying connected to the intention has been really helpful for me because it does give me a sense of choice and helps me also get out of this binary thinking that sometimes I fall into, because if I really look at my motivation or my intention or even my desire, like what do I desire to do, right? It could be that answering this email and doing all this scheduling stuff for the next hour actually leads to the same desired state as being in flow and doing something really creative, and I get to make a choice about where the next hour takes me, and also at the same time kind of dissolving my own mental boundaries, maybe not even boundaries, binaries, right? About, oh, this one's a boring task and this one's an exciting task. Because at the end of the day, like is life, you know? They all exist. We don't really, yeah, I think like so much of it is it's so interesting to look at these resistances because it's like, why are they there? You know, wouldn't it be more fun to live without resistance, to just be like, oh yeah, you know, this shows up at my door, I get to do this. Yeah, and I think a lot about like how for me life, you know, I've been thinking, we're getting deeper here, but I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, talking to different family members about, you know, something you mentioned earlier, Nick, which is like the phenomenon of like getting older, wanting to retire, right? And, you know, maybe even dealing with physical body ailments. And I've been thinking a lot about like our relationship to making mistakes or even like wasting time. You know, there's this concept of like, don't waste your time, which I think is so interesting because it's so big and nuanced. And a lot of it, when you look at the energy underneath it, to me, what I perceive is there's a fear of making a mistake or like fear of doing things wrong, when actually like the only thing that life really leads us to is like death. Right. So if you are trying to not make a mistake, you know, the ultimate end goal in life from that perspective is death. Right. So that can't be like all these things that sometimes I notice I do to not make mistakes is this is going back to the accountability question that Tanya Mark brought in. I don't think that's the right lens to look at it. You know, there has to be a different orientation to life. And something I'm thinking about now is like learning, right? We're all here to evolve in some shape or form. And yeah, I've been noticing like, okay, where am I bracing? Where am I procrastinating because I'm afraid of making mistakes? Right? Because that is an illusion. You know, there's no mistakes in life, because if you live in that neighborhood of mistakes, you know, all of that is actually this fear of doing the wrong thing, which then leads to death, and death is inevitable. You can't stop it, right? But if you orient towards a different thing, like evolution or learning, then it becomes really exciting. You know, everything is an opportunity for discovering. I kind of took us all the way to the middle of the ocean here. I saw Nick being like, where are we now?
I'm like, and of course I'm like, I'm catching up to you in the ocean. I'm almost there, Jonathan. Because I was like, let's go and be in flow. It's always so beautiful. And like Nick has that way of like bringing us back too. Because I look over and Nick was like, we are coming back. We are not going out to the ocean, y'all. We're going to stay. Let's bring it back. And then we're like, okay.
And then in our next chat with Jonathan, we'll just start in the middle of the ocean.
That's right. Well, it's kind of how today started anyway.
Exactly. Today we started in the water, like at the beach. And next time we'll start in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's so fun to share time with you, Jonathan. I just think, you know, like even when Nick and I were prepping to get on with you today, it's like always this bright, shiny, sparkly vibe. Like we get to spend time with Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and dropping us into the depths and giving
You're
us
so
a lot
welcome.
to meditate on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's important in these times to take some time to go a little deeper, not stay on the surface all the time. Jonathan, do you want to share how folks can find you if they want to drop into your ocean a little deeper sometime?
Oh, wow.
Let's see. You can find my, I've been enjoying being on Substack, actually. I'm kind of growing that part of my ecosystem. It's kind of an extension of my podcast, Healing the Spirit, which some folks might know. So yeah, folks can find me there. I work with folks one-on-one. I teach classes and immersions, and yeah, my newsletter. There's also another space people can find me in. Instagram.
Yes, and also, may I, dear friend, mention the podcast that you share and do neat things with dear friend, mutual friend Mary Shush. My Life is Better with You in it. I see that podcast is reawakening and there's conversations happening there. So another place
Mary's
to find
a dear
you.
friend, and yeah, we have conversations there. It's really fun.
Alrighty. Well, until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Queer Spirit is hosted and produced by Nick Venegoni and Tanya Mark Oviedo. This episode was edited by Eric Shackney. Eric is a medium, energetic practitioner, and multifaceted musician with their own healing practice and Patreon offerings via Trans Alchemy, which includes a free monthly embodiment meditation. Check them out on patreon.com/transalchemyofficial. Thanks for listening, and please join us again soon.
Yes, please.